Originally, I was contacted by Van Meter Pettit, who was working with his group of Leadership Lexington participants back in 2010. We led them through a whole process of doing a call for artists, which went out locally and nationally. 120 artists responded to that. We then worked with a group of curators, arts professors, and artists to narrow that field down to 14. We wanted to narrow it down even more. We sought the help of just regular citizens through the Creative City Summit. We had a voting process where people could identify up to 5 of their favorite artists out of the 14. And then we also brought it to a gallery hop where people were given the same option to vote. 412 ballots were cast that led us to the 5 artists that we commissioned to create these proposals.
5 of us were selected to come to Lexington all together on the same weekend, which was an interesting experience. And we were led around by a group of people from Leadership Lexington and Jim Clark from Lex Arts.
And at first they were, I think, a little suspect. The artists sat there with their arms folded for the first part of our orientation. And finally I said, well, what's the problem? Why are you acting odd about this? And they said, well, nobody's asked us just to come and do whatever we want. You know, usually we're trying to solve a problem, or, you know, somebody has a park that needs to be spruced up, or there's a building that's an eyesore, so we want something in front of it, and I said, no, it's whatever you want to do. That's what we want you to react to Lexington and give us a proposal that would be unique to this place.
On that weekend, my flight from Lexington was canceled, and ended up having all day Sunday in Lexington to look around, and sort of discovered the site across the street. And suddenly it sort of clicked. This would be a really great site, and I think it's important that Leadership Lexington really was enthusiastic by all 5 artists. And I'm pleased and honored that I was selected to be the first one out of that group.
Well, we started at the very top. First we went to Mayor Gray and said, would you support this, since it's on a city-owned building? And he said yes, and he said, you need to talk to the architects and the engineers. We already had a track record with them, and also, obviously, Pogue Engineers and Will Hyde have probably worked together several times on major projects around town. So there was a really good group of people who could work with each other and who could also guide us in the way of making this project work.
The sizes are then sort of derived from the spatial parameters. 18 by 28 feet, I think, is what I was working with. I was looking for something that would have a kind of more or less contiguous sort of triangular buttress shape. So I start playing around with circles. This is a weathering steel alloy, commonly called Corten, it's a brand name. 1 foot by 10 foot strips. I have machines that roll the strips to radius. We start on the bottom, on the floor. We put one ring together. We clamp another ring to it. We use the holes we've drilled as pilot holes, and we continue vertically. These are about 80 inches tall, so they're assembled, and then, you know, we pack them up, got a crane, put them on a truck, brought them to Jim's yard out just outside of town. Even though there's a kind of plan, the final configuration of the pieces are often somewhat improvised, not in a way that's sort of unexpected. So improvised in the true sense of improvised, like there's some structure underneath in which you are sort of working with.
Things like gravity and weight and mass, and the way in which you can bring gravity on as a kind of partner.
You know, certainly the people I've worked with here have been tremendously supportive, open to, you know, a really kind of wild idea to put this big sculpture on the roof. Lexington has a great vibe. I lived in Houston. My mother's family's from Texas. There is something very true about a kind of a southern sort of ease. I feel, I mean, even just in a restaurant or bar here, you know, there's just a kind of sort of reassurance, right? Kind of nice pace and a genuine friendliness, right? Which is something that we don't have necessarily in, you know, Central New York or New York City all the time.
There were so many people interested in seeing this happen, starting with Mayor Gray, and that also translated to the folks that we had to work with, even from a legal point of view. That Frost Brown Todd helped us with legal services in terms of the contracts and working out all the issues around that. And then Jim Wilhite at Wilhite Limited was more than accommodating, and the folks at Pogue Engineering were the same. So everybody found a way to support the project, and I think knew that they were doing something that would be transformative. So just the encouragement of knowing that there's people that want to see this happen. So that was very rewarding. Well, public art always gets a reaction. And I think in large part that's because of how people encounter public art. When you're going to a museum or a gallery, you know you're doing that volitionally. You're going there because you want to go there. So it could be a provocative exhibit, it could be a boring exhibit. It doesn't really matter that you've made that choice. Public art does not allow you to make that choice. You encounter it where it is.
It's a change, and it's a kind of intervention in a space that you don't expect to see a work of art, but it's a building that's an art center. It sort of allows us to re-see this art center as these two very different ideas about what architecture was supposed to communicate and what it was supposed to convey: neoclassicism, Art Deco. And I think within that sort of mix, I think good, interesting interventions allow us to sort of see things again, see things in a new way, and also to think about, maybe you look around Lexington now and say, there's another interesting corner between two buildings. I wonder what could you do there? Or that there are spaces already existing.
Balancing Act and Horse Mania and Dynamic Doors whetted people's appetite for public art, and they were anxious to see something happen that would be more long-lasting. And that's exactly, I think, where we've moved to now, is that we can now move on to create the permanent public art as well as temporary sculptural exhibits.
Even though this is a big scale, it's clearly sculpture, but I think it has an opportunity to kind of exist in that way as something that looks like it belongs there. I think it has this very strong relationship to its place and its site, but on the other hand, doesn't. And I think that tension, that kind of dynamic tension between what's there and what's possible is what good art can do. I'm very happy with the results. Yeah.